What is up, guys? Drew Martin here as college football is here. Week 0, under 24 hours away as I'm talking Friday afternoon, August 25th. Talking the games for Saturday, August 26th here. And at the top of the card, going to talk them all here from a betting perspective, give an opinion on all of them. Spent a lot of time researching them, guys. So get into them now. 2:30 Eastern time. 299-300 as we're going down the order in rotation order, that is. 2:30 Eastern. I believe it's 7:30 p.m. It is a night game in Dublin, Ireland. Aviva Stadium. Looks to be talking Navy, Notre Dame here, kicking us off for the 2023 college football season. And first up, do need to bring up the weather here. 65 degrees, 10 to 15 miles per hour, and it looks like 80% chance of rain. So in terms of scoring a lot of points, it's not ideal weather for that. Plus the fact, I believe this is a soccer stadium. You know, sometimes the surface doesn't always play as well. And we get Navy here, primarily an option attack, and up against Notre Dame, running a new system. So it's something to watch. We're seeing total of 49, and the Fighting Irish laying about 3 touchdowns. Looking across the odds screen, it looks to be minus 20 in the hook. So little money coming in on Navy. We have seen some under money as well. I'll start off with the Irish side of things. Year number 2 in the Marcus Freeman administration here. The young coach got the job when Brian Kelly left for LSU. And recruiting-wise, he's done a great job. We'll see in terms of getting the wins on the field in year number 2. He brings in a new offensive coordinator, a new system, maybe more importantly, a new quarterback. Sam Hartman makes the trip to South Bend, Indiana here, and he comes from Wake Forest. You might know him as, I believe he's ACC Conference all-time passing leader. Either way, he's a really good quarterback if you watched him play for the Demon Deacons. I think he's going to translate well into the Notre Dame system. There was some, kind of rumblings of him having a little trouble kind of getting the grasp of everything in the new offense in the spring. But a lot of what I've read of recent, he's ready to go. I think that Notre Dame coming into this season is more of a bet on team for me. I'm looking for ways to bet on them. I think they have an outside chance at making the playoff. I think they'll be pretty good. However, the new system, new quarterback, all that coming into it, plus going all the way over, to the continent of Europe and playing a game. I don't love the fact of laying a whole lot of points here and going up against the military academy in the Navy midshipmen. And really the reasons why is, they're running the ball a lot of long possessions, grinding out first downs. It shortens the game. So in terms of like beating your opponent by a lot of points, doesn't always come to fruition. This Navy team, I think, is going to be pretty good, guys. They return 17 starters, 9 starters on defense. So this defense for Navy should be pretty stout. They do have a new coach, Ken Niumatalolo, I believe, was his name. He is out. New coach in, new offensive coordinator as well. Makes the move from Kennesaw State. Reading up on Navy, they're going to open it up a little bit. At least that's what they're saying in the clippings, in the quotes. More of a run-pass option team this season. However, getting the military academies away from the option, that's going to be a tough pull. So I want to see it with my eyes before I start betting like Navy overs and looking for them to kind of open up the passing game. But look for more passing anyway in the run pass option style. But I do think they keep it on the ground. And really where I'm going with this, guys, as a side, I would lean with Navy if like you only like betting sides. But even more so, bringing in the weather, a cool night, it looks like a lot of rain, at least if you go by the projections here for Dublin, Ireland on Saturday night, and a little bit of wind as well. Talked about the playing surface. I think we get a shorter game. And lastly, and this is going to be something with all of college football this season, but particularly in week 0, week 1, as bettors, we might be able to get an advantage jumping on more unders because the rules changes. As bettors, always looking for changes overall. One of the best ways is going after rules changes because it kind of changes everything, that has to do with the game, the fundamentals of the game. And the rules changes are the clock. It's not going to stop on first downs. Now, I guess there's an argument to be made, and I've talked to a couple guys. I was talking with Jeff They Do just a couple hours ago. He brought up the fact that, going back and watching the games, which I just did, a lot of times they wouldn't stop the clock for that long anyway, on the first down. Now, if it came to like a last possession drive to tie the game, they were really particular about like putting down the first down and then starting the clock for the next set of downs. But sometimes if it wasn't like that, all that important of a drive, like in the middle of the game, they really would only stop it for a couple seconds and then just start running again. So I'm not sure how much it's going to factor into less plays in the game, but it's something to watch here. And nonetheless, it's making me pump the brakes on betting overs, at least in week 0, possibly in week 1 here before I see it with my own eyes. Either way, guys, talked about the option attack, longer possessions. I think Navy shortens the game, and Notre Dame might have a little bit of trouble here with the new offense getting it rolling. So seeing a total was 50. We've seen a little under money here, 49 pretty much across the board. I like the under in the first game we're talking here, top of the card, Navy and Notre Dame to kick us off. Got 7 games breaking down on Saturday. That was the first. And at Drew Martin Bets on Twitter. If you're watching on Facebook as well, not sure if anybody is, feel free to comment below. Please like the video if you're liking the content. And we'll hit all of these games for week 0 action as we got 7 p.m. Las Cruces, New Mexico, UMass and New Mexico State. I'm actually excited about this one, guys. I went to New Mexico in Las Cruces on a drive back from Las Vegas to Fort Lauderdale. I like the town. And Jared Kill in his second year here with New Mexico State, the Aggies, laying -6.5 at Bet Online offshore. It looks to be -7 pretty much across the board. I like the -6.5 on New Mexico State in game number 2. We got 45 being the total. It's the Minutemen versus the Aggies as UMass makes the long trip from the Northeast to New Mexico. And do want to apologize for the voice, guys. Got back from Vegas, feel a little bit sick, but hey, hopefully I make it through here. Jerry Kill in his second year, I think he's a good coach. I mean, they went to a bowl game last season, so a big turnaround for this New Mexico State program. They got the same coordinators, the same system. They're returning their quarterback as well. He's not a guy that's going to be playing on Sundays, but he's a tough kid. He can throw it around. So all of that in the mix points me towards looking to bet on them early in the season, talking about New Mexico State here. And this was a game that it was priced New Mexico State -11-point favorites not too long ago. Now they're as low as -6.5. That's almost a 50% haircut. So I think we're actually buying low here on the Aggies. You look at the UMass side of things and talked about it going from -11 to as low as -6. And that's a huge move in college football for a side. I think a big reason why is their defense improved a lot from last year. That is a big reason why. But also they're bringing in a new quarterback from Clemson, a transfer that a lot of people like, an athletic kid. And so you get a new quarterback with a better defense. It's not rocket science, guys. Money is they get hyped up. People follow it along. I just think it's moved too much. I mean, we're asking a UMass team that's 3-37 their last 40 games. They've lost 24 straight road games to go, 3 time zones here and stay within 1 score of a bowl team last year? I don't know, guys. I think that's asking a little bit too much from the UMass Minutemen. In fact, this is one of the games I like the most on the card for Saturday. One that I bet -6.5 offshore right now at Bet Online. It is -7 at a lot of shops as I'm talking Friday afternoon here. Every game on the board. Third game up, 9 p.m. Eastern. We got FIU, the Golden Panthers, versus the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs in a Conference USA conference matchup. I don't know if I'm supposed to say conference twice, talking about Conference USA in a conference game, but either way, whatever proper English is, we got 57.5 being the total. Louisiana Tech -12-point favorites. So they're laying a dozen here. Head coach Sonny Cumbie and company, and laying almost 2 touchdowns here with the defense that gave up an average of 38 points per game last season in Conference USA. It's not like they're going up against the SEC or Big Ten or a bunch of really good Pac-12 offenses. I mean, this defense was awful. So are they going to be that much better? Well, it's tough to get any worse. They gave up 30 points in 9 of their games last year, 30 or more points in 9 of their games. They gave up 40 or more points in half of their games, in 6 of their games last season. And they gave up 50 or more points in 2 of the games last season. And that doesn't include they played Clemson, who kind of called off the Dogs and just scored 48 against them. So what I'm getting at is this defensive front got pushed around last season. Now the question becomes, Mike McIntyre in his second year at FIU, can they actually take advantage of that with their offensive line and their running game? And I don't know. This is another team that I saw in person last season. I saw them in the UTSA game. I went down to West Miami, and saw an FIU game in person. They didn't have a whole lot of, big bruisers up front, this FIU program. So I'm not 100% sure they're going to be able to. Now, they do return their quarterback, Grayson James. And a lot of people like him, like reading about this, returning the quarterback. They do have some athletes on the outside. I think they'll be able to make some plays and score some points. I mean, last year when these two teams played, it was 42-35. So there was a whole lot of points scored. But this season, one thing I noticed with Grayson James, and he is returning, he might be, a lot better than last year, but he was one of those quarterbacks that comes off the sideline. And granted, it was a frustrating game for him, but he would take off his helmet and be screaming at people. He's kind of looked like a little bit of a hothead. I don't know if that's the greatest profile to get the guys going type deal. And a quarterback I look to bet on. That's why I kind of pumped the brakes on betting on Grayson James. But who knows? He might be a whole lot better with the offseason. And brought up the score last year. FIU actually beat Louisiana Tech outright by a touchdown, 42-35. And this was a team that was just 1-11 2 years ago. They're 4-8 last year. Their head coach, Mike McIntyre, he's a guy that's built programs before from San Jose State. It's almost kind of that same profile. Are they heading in the right direction? Is now the time to be buying on FIU? I think you could be making that argument. However, as a South Florida guy, born and raised, you kind of learn the FIUs, the FAUs of the world, the South Florida programs, even Miami, going up at really anywhere outside of the state of Florida sometimes can be a huge obstacle for whatever reason. They don't always play as well. But it is first game of the season. I think FIU, will be ready to go. Good coach. Plus the 12 might be one of those, games. It gets a little iffy at the end here, but I do think, hey, you're looking to bet on every game. One opinion on them. FIU plus the dozen. That's the nightcap, by the way. That's the last kickoff, 9 p.m. Eastern time. I would go with FIU as the side. I'll try to keep it under 20 minutes here, guys. Going a little long on the first 3, so my apologies for that. Got 4 left as I try to keep my voice into this. It's kind of crazy. I couldn't even talk 2 days ago. So next game up, 8 p.m. Eastern time, San Jose State and USC. We got a little Mountain West versus Pac-12, 305, 306, rotation numbers, 66 being the total, minus 31. That's the Trojans as the home favorite in the Coliseum. Bought up from 29, so a 2-point move here. But with this big of a spread, I don't know that that's all that big. 66, the total, up from 63, so some over money as well. And you can see why. This is a good quarterback matchup. We get the Heisman Trophy winner in Caleb Williams and the USC Trojans under Lincoln Riley coached offense. So that kind of, obviously sets up well for the Trojans to score a lot of points. But even more under the radar, I feel, is San Jose State's quarterback, Chevin Condero, the kid, you might remember him from Hawaii, the old Rainbow Warrior here. Last year, he had over 3,250 yards passing with 23 touchdowns and only 6 picks. So he put together a heck of a season there for the Spartans. And last year, their defense was good. This was a team that finished 7-5. And their defensive front was really good, probably arguably the best in the Mountain West. But the problem here is they lost 5 of their top 6 sack getters. So their top, pretty much quarterback rushers are gone. That brings up huge question marks. You can see why the over money, and I do like a lot of points here, but with the new rules, I'm kind of hesitant, pumping the brakes on betting overs. So that's what's keeping me off the total. Instead, I think San Jose State, this might be a game where it's like, 41, I don't know, 17, 44, 21, something in that like high scoring. USC wins, but I don't know that they cover the 31 here. Week 0 type action. Plus the fact if they do get out to a big lead, likely putting in the second string guys. And with San Jose State's offense, maybe that back door is open. So overall, I think plus the points here with the big dog, one of those maybe hold your nose specials with the San Jose State Spartans. We got next game up. This might be the most intriguing game. 7 p.m. Eastern time in the beautiful city of San Diego, California. We get the Ohio Bobcats at the San Diego State Aztecs. We're seeing San Diego State now -2.5 or -3, depending what sports book you're going off of. 48.5 being the total. Now, checking the weather if you need to. San Diego, 76 degrees. Looks like 10-mile-an-hour wind. Should be a beautiful day there as the hurricane has made it through. But I'm breaking this one down because we saw some line movement throughout the summer and even more recently. This was a game where San Diego State was like -5, maybe even as high as -6 point favorites. And Ohio was really taking money, a lot of like trickling in, just slowly heading down to as low as -1 on San Diego State, maybe even a pick 'em. So a big move here on the Ohio Bobcats, which in a way is surprising because it's a MAC team taking money on the road. But in a way, it's not because Ohio finished the season very strong. If you were betting on the Bobcats, they won a lot of games down the stretch with their backup quarterback. And I think that kind of translates well. Add on to that, San Diego State lost their last 2 games of last season. So you're getting a hot team from last year and a team that kind of fell off at the end of last season. So that kind of mix would kind of bring to fruition money coming in on the team that was hot last year. And they do return a pretty good amount, but I almost think there's almost extra. And this, I could be wrong on this, but I brought this up with Gabe Morency on Sports Grid the other night, that Curtis Rourke is the quarterback for the Ohio Bobcats. And he's a good player. I mean, he was the MAC Offensive Player of the Year, I believe, either last year or 2 years ago. He did get injured. He's coming back off the injury, which is a huge question mark. But his older brother, who played in the Canadian Football League and also NFL preseason this year, has looked well, has looked good, and has won a lot of bets along the way. I almost think like sports bettors are carrying that over to like, hey, I've won money on this guy Rourke. I'm going to carry it over to his little brother and bet on him here. I could see that being part of the push almost. And it almost creates like an artificial buy low spot on San Diego State. Their quarterback, Jalen Maiden, he's a heck of an athlete. This is a guy coming out of Texas, the state of Texas high school quarterback, which usually, I kind of know the system, the X's and O's, at least a little bit more than the Florida guys from my experience. He's a guy that came out of high school with offers from Georgia, from Alabama, from Ohio State. He pretty much could pick where he wanted to go. He did sign with an SEC team in Mississippi State and has since made his way over to San Diego State. And he's a dual threat guy. He's lefty. He's pretty good. And having the off season, he's even a guy that played on defense, that type of athlete. I think he played safety for a little while in college. I think he's going to be able to make enough plays with his legs and give this Ohio defense enough trouble that we've seen this line go from 6 down to 1. Now it's pushing back up to 3. So there's some buyback here. I agree with that buyback. I think the Aztecs are the side at home. I mean, let's face it, guys. There is a lot to say towards Ohio and their season last year, but you kind of got to bring in the fact, who were they playing? And the fact that we're asking a MAC conference team to go on a long road trip, first game of the season, and stay with, win the game. I mean, if you're betting on Ohio, you're getting less than a field goal here. So you're pretty much saying they're going to win the game against a team that's out recruited them, pretty much every year here of recent tracking. So I just think it's a big ask, and I think San Diego State's the side in this one. We got 2 games left here, every game on the board. If you're liking the content, please smash the like button. And feel free to comment, guys, in here what you agree with, what you disagree with. Below, all is welcome. We get UTEP in Jacksonville State up next. This is 5:30 Eastern on Saturday. It's the UTEP Miners -1 or -1.5 here as the road favorite up against Jacksonville State. The Gamecocks making their first FBS game as they're making the step up from the Atlantic Sun in FCS up to FBS in the Conference USA action. So a conference game, actually. And Jacksonville State, well, it's 54 is the total, and Jacksonville State's catching 1.5. So this is a team that averaged 36 points per game last year at the FCS level. They went 9-2. Rich Rodriguez as their head coach. They're likely going to have a flashy offense here. But you got to keep in mind, they only played one FBS team. They played against Tulsa, and they kind of got their doors blown off 54-17. So making the step up, this is almost like a really difficult handicap. This isn't 101 level handicapping because they're going up against UTEP. And if you followed UTEP, Dana Dimmel, their head coach, UTEP's big up front. They've recruited on the offensive line very well. I've watched this team play a bunch in the past couple of years. He's in his 6th year now. They just finished 5-7 last year, 1 game out of a bowl. The year before, they did make a bowl. I think it's kind of a program that's chugging along right now. So I don't love the matchup for Jacksonville State. I really don't. And Dana Dimmel, quote coming in that I read, this is the most athletic group we've had since we've been here in El Paso. I think that's kind of a bet on for the Miners. Plus, their quarterback, Grayson Hardison, he's pretty good if you've watched him play. He's like 6'3", 220. He almost has that kind of like NFL look, like he can run a little bit, but he doesn't run all that much. Like almost like an outside shot at making an NFL roster. I wouldn't be very surprised in the next couple years. He's a veteran. I'd look to be betting on UTEP here. Now, granted, it's a road game, first FBS game in Jacksonville, Alabama. It's probably going to be a pretty raucous atmosphere, especially for them and the Gamecocks. But I think UTEP has enough to get it done, and we get them as low as -1 here. So UTEP is the short road favorite, I think, is the side as we got 1 game left. Guys, I'm Drew Martin at Drew Martin Bets on Twitter, doing this live on Facebook as well and YouTube. But yeah, man, please, if you're liking the content, smash that like button and comment below. Last game, we got Hawaii and Vanderbilt, 3:11, 3:12, 7:30 Eastern, as we get the rare Mountain West SEC matchup. 56 being the total. Vanderbilt -17.5 as the favorite. Now this one in Nashville. So Hawaii going from Maui all the way to Nashville, Tennessee, dealing with all the fires. I always find that kind of tough to handicap. Does that hurt them? Does it help them? Are they going to try to win one for Hawaii? It was a different island where the school is and where the fires were, but still, and granted, I don't know all that much about it, but it's kind of an interesting piece to the puzzle, I guess we could say. Now, I do want to kind of clarify one of the preseason bets I have, really the only season win total that I have, is Vanderbilt over 3.5 wins for their season wins. That's what they're priced at. I actually think this team has an outside chance at making a bowl game. When you look at their non-conference, it's the first 4 games of the season, and it's this Hawaii team. It's Alabama A&M, not Alabama A&M, an FCS team, which they should be. Then it's Wake Forest, which should be a competitively priced game. They have a shot to win that. And then they play UNLV in Las Vegas. I don't think it's out of the question that they run the table and go 4-0, cash this season win total by mid-September. But even if they drop 1, even 2 of those non-conference games, I think they actually have a puncher's chance of punching up in class in the SEC. This is a team that beat Kentucky and Florida in back-to-back weeks last season. They're on the east side of the SEC. I believe it's the last year of divisions in the SEC. And when you're on the East side, you get a couple more winnable games. They've recruited really well. And let's face it, sorry guys, they're in the SEC, and the SEC paid out $50 million to each institution last fiscal year. So they're getting a whole lot of, financial help being in the SEC. They broke ground on a $300 million facilities and stadium upgrade. They're recruiting really well under Clark Lee, the longtime assistant under Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. He comes over, gets the job. He's recruiting well. They got those facilities now to sell. And sure enough, they're flirting with top 30 recruiting classes at Vanderbilt, which is supposed to be a top 10 or 20, academic institution in the country. So obviously they're kind of lowering their standards a little bit. This team might actually be pretty good in the years to come, and it might start on Saturday. Now, one thing I'm kind of wary of is laying a big number against Hawaii, because Timmy Chang in his second year, last season, they started off rough. They actually got blown out by Vanderbilt on the island, and they lost a bunch of games as well. But then they had a bye week, and they really turned it around the second half of the season. They covered 5 of the last 7 down the stretch, and their quarterback's pretty good. Braden Shader is his name. And one thing I like about it, if you watch him play, he's pretty good. But in high school, in the semifinal game, he actually played with a broken jaw. I kind of love that kind of, tough mindset from the quarterback. And, Hawaii has really good high school football. They're recruiting a lot better. They've overturned their roster in the last 2 years, meaning almost nobody that was there 3 years ago is still on the roster. Overall, I think that's enough for me to stay off of laying 17.5 with Vanderbilt. Again, guys, sorry, man. This voice, I'm getting there. By next week in the Every Game on the Board with all the handicappers, I'll be good to go. But wanted to run through this one, 4 week 0, little appetizer special. And anyway, that's what's keeping me off of the 17.5 with Vanderbilt. But I do like the under of 56. Bringing in the rules changes, plus the fact I think both teams actually keep it on the ground more than a lot of people expect. And I think the Hawaii defense is a lot better as well. So, guys, that's going to do it. Went a little long. Sorry about that. Obviously, my voice giving out as well. But, yeah, that does it for week 0, college football, Every Game on the Board. Smash that like button. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those tickets.